Hello there. The far right is about to sweep to power in the EU elections. Cue wokey lefty meltdown. While our UK media fixates on trying to find the cigarette paper that can fit between the lab-con open borders and net zero uniparty policies, the people of the EU are watching more farmer protests as they prepare to start voting tomorrow across the bloc for new EU parliamentarians. And the indications are that the right wing, the right so fars, will triumph and reshape EU politics. And instantly we have The Guardian reporting that EU leaders are so concerned over foreign interference in the polls due to take place from Thursday to Sunday that they have put rapid alert teams on notice to swing into action in the event of a serious incident. Officials say the quantity of disinformation has reached tsunami levels, but political leaders have been the slowest to catch on. And get this, they're preparing for a series of attacks on the legitimacy of the election results, along the lines of Trump, with one unnamed senior official quoted as saying, "The expectation is that it is around election day that we will see this interruption of narratives questioning the legitimacy of the European elections and in the weeks around it. 10 years ago we talked about election interference, but Donald Trump has shown us it is a lot easier, a lot cheaper, just to question things. You don't need to manipulate the vote." So the Campaign Disinformation Crisis Unit will stay running until well after the election has ended. Now I do have to ask whether this unit will end up uncovering evidence that any right-of-centre results were swayed by outside actors. It was Putin what done it, they would say. The EU's diplomatic service is also on high alert, supporting a network of fact-checking operations, continues The Guardian. Who checks those fact-checkers? Strange how they get this all up and running when it looks like support for the left is failing, isn't it? So we could end up with more nationalists in power in the EU, more Eurosceptic, more net zero skeptic, and a lot less woke too, i.e. totally diametrically opposed to the past approach. And the farmers' protests have come back with a vengeance to remind the EU voters that they are still not happy. About 500 tractors assembled at the Atomium Monument on the city outskirts, according to police. Around 1,200 demonstrators gathered, organised by the Dutch group Farmers Defence Force. Farmers travelled from the Netherlands, Belgium, Poland and Germany, reports the Voice of America. Now the Eurocrats had reacted to the previous farmer protests by walking back on various eco-issues. But this does not go far enough for the agricultural lobby. To the horror of the green blob, they want even more. And the farmers have become very, proficient at making their presence felt, haven't they? With farmers from 7 EU countries rolling into Brussels to impart their views on EU politicians. And Spanish and French farmers have been busily engaged in blocking the France-Spain border. With EU elections looming on June the 6th to the 9th, French and Spanish farmers used dozens of tractors to block both sides of the border on the AP8 highway in the Basque Country and the AP7 highway in Catalonia, says the Canadian Cattleman.ca. And it goes on to say, farmers played soccer and cooked paella while blocking crossings, creating long queues of cars and trucks. How very relaxing for them. This will all come as extremely bad news for those that want to force their populations to live in 15-minute neighbourhoods and eat bugs and all that factory-produced chemical gunk Frankenstein meat and dairy produce. Think of all those investments those politicians could have in net zero and associated programmes that could go up in smoke. And all that political capital tied up in net zero. They will not be happy, will they? No more prancing about the international stage at WEF and UN meetings, spouting about how eco-friendly they are and how they'd shut down their own country to save the planet. While all the while offshoring Western industrial bases to China and India so as to offshore their carbon footprints too. And that's no doubt followed by the shifting of their personal investment footprints too. While the developed world slowly folds economically in on itself. Our enemies will be so pleased at how all this is going for them. But at least the EU citizenry has woken up. At least they aren't following the uniparty line by only voting for the approved parties. The only problem those on the right of politics have is that their party offerings are so fragmented. So instead of one large right-wing grouping winning the day, it will be a few right-wing parties with a lot of seats between them. To be really effective, they have to work together in the way the left wing does. As the FT says, it will hinge on how closely France's Marine Le Pen and Italy's Giorgia Meloni work together that will determine the future for the European Union. If they are prepared to join forces, then it could be transformational where immigration, net zero and agriculture are concerned. But they do have differences. Le Pen is a rebel who fights the system, while Meloni is a pragmatist who works with it. However, the closer they work together, the more impact they will obviously have. As France 24 reports, the 720 legislators in the new parliament will have the power to shape policies on climate, migration, industry, defence and security. But they will also vote on what should be prioritised in the EU budget, which can be essential to policies like providing aid for Ukraine. And, shock horror, it goes on to say, a coalition of centre-right Christian Democrats, Conservatives and right-wing MEPs could thus be on track to hold a majority for the first time. But it's not just at an EU level. National elections among the EU 27 could cause more right-wing politicians to be elected over the next few years, as electors change their views and their votes. The whole EU could become a Ramona's worst nightmare, a hotbed of the right, where those on the left deemed to be spouting their mis- and disinformation are the ones that now get cancelled. Well, they have been all in favour of that approach themselves over the last few years, haven't they? Not that I approve of the lefty love for censoring anything they disagree with, but visiting a bit of karma on them? Well,